to celebrate our beautiful oceans, our beautiful mountains, and give recognition to them today, and also to celebrate our solidarity that we have in protecting that, in which we know is the most beautiful place in the world. When I was approached by the Sierra Club, and they were looking to partner with the First Nations group to put this day together, and the timing was very, it was good timing, and with all the LNG projects that are wanting to come into the territory and develop projects. The frustration is when they come in to our territory. And there was a presentation by Steelhead at the Central Saanich Council where Council passed a motion to oppose their project. Thank you, Mayor Windsor, and thank you to your council for that motion. When they came over, you know, they're in the very heart of Wsanec territory, and yet they chose to say and acknowledge the Coast Salish territory, when knowing very well they're in the heart of Wsanec. And that's the denial that industry has of our people. They completely deny our existence as though we're not here, as though industry is superior and we are inferior because we don't know what we're talking about. We don't know about our rights. But I'm happy to tell you, we do have Douglas Treaty rights. We know who we are. We know our territory. We know our history. And we're going to tell the industry that. And they're going to recognize that because we're not laying down and we're not going to take this. And it's, you know, our elders, our ancestors, they fought for everything that we have today. It is how we are still in existence. I'm sure they could have given up and said this is too hard of a battle, but they didn't. And everything that we have here today is because of their sacrifices and because of their fight. Our Douglas Treaty has been recognized and affirmed at every level of the court. It's recognized by the Crown. We've went to court to establish our rights. And it is frustrating when industry comes into the territories to propose a project, or they want tankers to go through the Salish Sea, and they want pipelines to go through the Salish Sea. And our message has always been clear. You have to come and talk with us and seek our consent. The Saanich Bay Marina case made that very clear, that the province cannot stick its nose in Douglas Treaty matters. So I think if Christy Clark and her government tried to make any sort of approval for any sort of project that involves Sarlip, that our winnings in the court show that the province has no jurisdiction to approve such a project.
LNG in the inlet is just, this is the wrong place for it, but that also implies that there's a right place for it. That's wrong. We don't need to be doing fracking anywhere in this province. There are many other opportunities for green energy. Site C is a false solution. We don't need tankers on this coast carrying bitumen that we can't clean up. You know, the list is long, and in every single instance we're fighting it, but we're fighting it as well as the people on the ground. And so we want to figure out the ways that we can be supportive of what's happening with First Nations who are fighting this on their territory. So Sierra Club BC has been working for a number of years now on finding ways to be better allies. We had the Pull Together campaign, which was helping to fight against Enbridge with Raven Trust, and 7 First Nations that were taking the Canadian government to court. So there's no shortage of problems, but we need to start also talking about what the solutions look like.
We are alive at a critical point in our history because industry is coming in because of Christy Clark's pipe dream of an agenda. They're coming in company after company after company, and the reason why I say we are alive at a critical point in our history is because we are of the right frame of mind to say no and to recognize when something is reckless and detrimental to our inlet, to our livelihood, to the way of our living would drastically change if projects like this are approved, or if projects like this, if industry was to force their way through and say this project is happening. Our fight isn't with our relatives in Malahat. By far, it is not with our relatives in Malahat. The issue that we have is the industry that comes in and is trying to walk all over our Douglas Treaty rights. And I see the struggle with our neighbors across the water, and when industry comes in and they have a strong agenda with millions of dollars to help them with that agenda, and they're looking out for themselves, and just like us, we're looking out for ourselves. We are opposed to the underwater pipelines. We are opposed to the tanker traffic that they would bring to our territory, and we are opposed to a floating facility in our Saanich Inlet. And I want to be clear, that is what we oppose. As Chief of Sartlip, I know that my position here is just to ensure that future generations can make a living off of the land, continue to make a living off of the land, and to make sure that just as my ancestors fought for what I have here today, I'm fighting for everything, and so is our council, and so is our community, to make sure that future generations can fish these very waters in our Saanich Inlet, can hunt the land, to speak the language as Chaels, our Creator, intended, and that's what we'll do. We're Chwilnuch. We're the last to be created in this territory. Chaels, our Creator, created us to walk these lands, to hunt these lands. And what a gift that is from our Creator, and we're going to continue to make sure that that gift is there for future generations.
This is local, and it's Labrador tea.
We already knew this, but we got scientific facts backed by what we already believed in. What we got out of the water is 85% of our diet. And then not only that, but when I talk about the water being our mother, we have an indefinite spiritual connection between us as Tsleil-Waututh and our waters.
It fills my heart that we're not standing alone in fighting for our inlet, and to make sure that no industry comes in and is trying to walk all over us. The federal government and the Crown has a fiduciary obligation to make sure that our Douglas Treaty, in all aspects of it, is protected and preserved. And I'm here to also call on the Crown that they have an obligation to us to ensure that when projects like Kinder Morgan come through and other projects, that they have an obligation to look out for not only Canada's interest, but Douglas Treaty interests as well, and to make sure that our interests are protected, and that includes our underwater environment as well.
There are deep and grave concerns about major resource development projects in British Columbia, particularly the heavy oil pipeline proposals being advanced by Enbridge, Northern Gateway, Kinder Morgan's Trans Mountain Pipeline, but also the Site C Dam issue and the Lilu Island issue. And recently there's been the release of some information about diseased fish that are in the salmon farming industry. So there's a growing concern throughout the province.
We have to look at the watersheds. We have to look at making sure that the Fraser River that goes all the way past Prince George, that we have to look after that too, and we have to work with our relatives and our family and our friends in the interior to ensure that we help and support them as much as we can, because we can't continue to have dams go in and limit our fish's ability to go and spawn, because that is our livelihood. And that is, that's food on our table. We've said this to Kinder Morgan, that, we have unqualified rights, meaning that there's no limitations to them, that when the tanker traffic goes through our Salish Sea, I told them, it isn't by accident that it was renamed the Salish Sea. I said, because the Salish people use those waters. And it's time for them to wake up and realize this. And, for us here in Sarlip, we're always keen to fight for everything that we can maintain and have. And I'm very privileged to come from this community who has that fighting spirit, who's willing to say no and not to take it anymore. I look at our beautiful Wsanec Inlet, and I cannot fathom having a floating LNG facility there. The potential for danger is just far too high. And in the beginning, I've stated clearly, I am not going to subject my community to those risks and dangers that come with that.
CEM, Nostalgia, CEM, Tanya Senasnat, Chuklamison, Outsen Kachitsa Kamichasin, E Otatis Conas Conaul, Nusli Conas Squal or Coquino Squal, Noch Chisen Maqualia Conasanata Trolitiakais.
The Lummi people just had a determination on the coal terminal at Cherry Point, which was a big win for the American side. A colonial government has displaced us for 100 years. And so we're healing too over on the American side. That pain, that suffering. I know that my relatives, my grandfather, grandmothers, ones before them, they've all suffered this loss of culture. And I'm just proud of Tanya for being the strength that they're our future, and we need them to be strong, because they're going to be the leaders of this fight in the future. And they need their language, they need their culture. That inherent right that the people of this land need to carry on these practices, this traditional practice, in modern times. It's like we have to look back in order to go forward. And so we, myself, 3 other Lummi tribal members came over here and helped Nick build his reef net. And he was able to set out his net for the first time in 100 years. And the spirit of the Shwala is the reef net. It runs deep in our blood. I just hope to see someday that sustainable way of life returns, and it's present, and it's healthy, and it's alive and vital.
We have alternatives. Tsleil-Waututh doesn't. We have solar panels on our daycare. We have putting solar panels on our min buildings, soon all the houses. We're part of the second best wind turbine company in Canada. We know for a fact it creates jobs. We know for a fact it's good for our environment. And that's the direction that we need to go. Take the $1.6 billion in subsidies that Canada gives to fossil fuels, cash subsidies, and I think it's $34 billion altogether, and take that and charge them that and be like Norway, charge them 80% and move ourselves out of the fossil fuel industry.
We know the government at both the provincial and federal level is looking at different spill response strategies for land and marine. The fact is we can't clean up spilt bitumen. We also, when we're exporting liquid frac gas, we're exporting those burdens that are climate burdens. We're all downstream of atmospheric pollution. It's not something we can be exporting. So we're calling on the governments to actually stand behind their promises for climate action, and that means not investing in dirty, dangerous infrastructure projects that lock us into a fossil fuel future.
I'm Bob Peart. I'm the Executive Director of the Sierra Club, British Columbia. And I want to acknowledge I'm in the traditional territory of the Wsanec people. And I also want to acknowledge the First Nations and the elders and the elected representatives that I'm sharing the podium with. The Sierra Club is working hard to stop a number of resource projects around the province, all of which destroy or undermine Indigenous rights, title, and opportunities, and the appropriate jobs and livelihoods that come with that. It's important to fight the various energy campaigns. We've got to defend our forests and our wildlife, and we must work with the people at the community level to help us transition to an economy that's less reliant on carbon. And that's why we're here today, helping to speak out against the proposed Steelhead LNG plant. We're very proud partners today with the Tsartlip Nation to bring you the Salish Sea Wsanec Gathering and celebrate our connections with each other and the land. Reconciliation needs to create space for us all to take the time to be with each other and exchange friendship and exchange knowledge. Today our focus is the Salish Sea and how fragile it is and how we can all work together to defend it. In closing, I want to say that the Sierra Club has a history of working closely with First Nations people across and throughout the province to organize, fundraise, and protest together to help put reconciliation into meaningful action. Whether it's Pull Together, which raised $600,000 for First Nations legal costs along the coast, or our current work with the Treaty 8 folks to stop Site C and help preserve their right to traditional harvest and access additional food resources, or celebrations like this today. We need to work collectively to put pressure on the provincial and the federal governments to keep their promises and to move towards a new relationship.
You know, what's happening is the debunking of the LNG myth, that somehow it's clean energy and it's harmless and so on and so forth. I think that narrative is systematically being taken apart. One of the glaring issues with LNG, of course, is there's no such thing as liquefied natural gas. It's liquefied frack gas. And fracking is absolutely devastating to the land, and it's destroying Treaty 8 territory. If you've ever seen fracking up close in Treaty 8, it's absolutely heartbreaking.
I've been doing my due diligence on this project. I've been meeting with the company, I've been meeting with First Nations, I've been meeting with elected officials, I've been knocking on doors asking people about this project because I want to make sure I understand the implications of this project for the Saanich Inlet and for my constituents, First Nations and non-First Nations. And I can say this, that the risks that this project pose, both environmental and safety risks, are, as far as I understand the project at this point, they are not acceptable. I have heard very loudly and clearly the 4 First Nations on this peninsula oppose this project, not just because, as Chief Tom indicated, not just because of the lack of consultation, but because of the nature of the project itself and the risk it poses. And I'm here to tell you today that if First Nations do not support this project, I cannot and I will not support Steelhead LNG in the Saanich Inlet. We're talking about constitutional and legal rights here that the Wsanec people have around Saanich Inlet. Those rights are real, they are in effect today. And we have, it's not just a political statement of support, we have a legal obligation to support those treaty rights. We, as the official opposition, would love to say yes to projects that made sense, that were sustainable, that transitioned us off of fossil fuels onto renewable energies. We would love to say yes to projects like that. But time after time after time, we are confronted with dumb projects located in stupid places, like the Saanich Inlet. This is a function of two things. First of all, the flaws in the process don't involve screening. So it's the proponents that end up picking the locations. That's a problem right there. But the other concern is big money that plays such a corrupting influence in our political process and on our environmental assessments. We need to get big money out of politics. It's all interconnected, folks. We have a responsibility not just to protect this place, but to put forward a positive vision that will create jobs, that will create economic activity, that will enhance our prosperity in so many ways, not just economic. And there's a number that are coming forward around protecting the Salish Sea, including the not a concept, but the Silcoteen notion of a tribal park in British Columbia, which I think is a very, very exciting development in British Columbia. It's come after a series of court cases that court case after court case have not only affirmed, but they've strengthened the rights of First Nations to take care of their lands, to take care of their resources. I think there's a number of proposals like this around the Salish Sea. It can get a bit confusing. They each have different objectives. They each apply to different areas. And I think at some point we need to come together and discuss these various proposals, making sure that we're not muddying the water or confusing the picture. But all of them point to a sustainable future that actually protects our environment rather than gradually degrades it. Rather than gradually industrializing the Salish Sea, the National Marine Conservation Area for the Southern Strait of Georgia, if First Nations consent in a fully informed way, if First Nations are partners in that project, are co-managing that project, as for example in Guayhanas, that I think is an example of an opportunity to move forward, to protect our environment, and to create sustainable economic development opportunities. So I'm an advocate for that particular initiative. I think it can complement the number of other initiatives that are underway in the Salish Sea.
The gift of the ocean, the songs that come from the ocean, the songs that come from the mountain, and the songs that come from the sky, from the birds that fly. Each one of these were left behind for us to follow. A lot of people say to me, Mr. Sampson, those days are over now, it's gone. It's time to deal with reality. It's time to deal with the way things are. That's not what our ancestors said. They said, here is the gift we are leaving behind for you. Look after it, treasure it, because what if you ever lose it, you'll never get it back. I wanted to start this talk with you today that way, because with each generation, with each time that has gone by, we talk of the treaty. The treaty really never gave us anything. But what the treaty did do, it allowed us to talk to you, the newcomers. It allowed us to say, yes, you can live in our land, but you can't have it. It allowed us to say, here are the food that we've been eating. We'll share it with you, but you cannot own it because it doesn't belong to us either. And we share it with you because we know we need to help those that need help. We shared with everyone that came into our life. We shared the salmon. We shared what they call animals, the deer, the elk, and all those things that walk in the mountain. We take the sacred eagle feather and we use it when we do our ceremonies. These gifts are not to be negotiated, and these gifts are not for sale. I took part in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission talks, and the items that they came up with was interesting. They talked about reconciliation, reconcile, reconstruct, recognition. But they didn't say anything about restoration. That's what we're talking about. You cannot have these things to reconcile until restoration is in place. Because I need it and you need it. It's not just for us First Nations. And it's not about the treaty right. It's about what was there before the treaty. It was there before everyone else started to do the things that are happening today. If we can have what was there before, the Saanich Inlet, it's dead. It died a long time ago. The birds, the salmon, in 1947, I was 12 years old then. And I was out there fishing with my father and my uncles, and all the Saanich people from this village used to fish out there. And when they came ashore, they started talking, sitting there having a cigarette, talking. And they were saying this in our language. Where did the salmon go? They're not there anymore. And the other elder said, oh, look, what's chilling? Oh, they've gone way out deep. They're not here no more. So we got to go way out deep and fish deeper. And they did. And they found the salmon. So we knew in 1947 that there was something happening and something going wrong. We tried to tell the biologists, we tried to tell government, and they said, well, who are you? Where is your certificate? Are you a scientist? Are you a biologist? Who are you? Now imagine asking somebody who's been here for thousands of years, who are you? It should be a disgraceful statement to ask that question. I'm not here to create a guilt feeling. I think if we are going to journey together for the benefit and the good of all people, and the good of the Saanich Peninsula and the Salish Sea, Gordie Hansen asked me one time, he said, what was this land called before that? And I said, well, the only words I know is it was called Elanganak, which means the homeland. And they named the homeland. Every tribe from Powell River right down into the United States. And they named each community, and each language that had to be used was named. That's why we wonder sometimes, using the word Salish Sea, it's a good thing because it helps the non-Indians, the new people, to realize that somebody was here before. Salish means this, hands. Listen, Salish. We always had our hands up like this. That's it. Oh, it's those people who hold their hands up. They said that in English, and so we translated it into our language. Oh, they're talking about our hands. So you see how we communicated in the early days with the newcomers. Why are we opposed to LNG? Why are we opposed to pipelines, it's because it comes into the Saanich Inlet all the way from Alaska, right down past our doorway and right into California, into Mexico. The headwaters are up in Chilcotin country, up in the Gitxsan-Wet'suwet'en country. It's up in those mountains where the water begins, where the salmon are born. And when they leave there, they go out to the ocean up north, and they come back the same route. And what do these salmon and what do these resources come back to? There is no more habitat. The logging, the mining, pipelines, urban development, rural development, all of these things have taken away that lifeline that comes from the northern part of British Columbia, and it belongs to a nation that's up there. We have to talk to our brothers and our relatives up from the ocean right up to the headwaters of British Columbia.
The regalia, the people that were dancing in front, each one of those things had a lesson or a prayer that is put into it to help create. What we received was a blessing. The honor of one was the honor of the all that was in this room. And that to me is the beginning of the foundation of our Indigenous laws of who we are and how we're going to be Kinder Morgan. How we are beating Kinder Morgan. How we are going to beat the industry. That is the foundation that helped Indigenous people in our surrounding area win 170 legal cases. 97% of the court victories, that's what we're winning. And that's the foundations of the laws of our culture and our spirituality that say that my dear uncle was saying, that is going against the laws. When you break the rules of our house, it's time to leave. And that's what we're doing. And that's what we need to do when we included you in these ceremonies. That's what I see my relations do. They put a blessing on you too, because you have a voice, you have a role in this to do something for your future generations too. In my language, we say Natsamat, with one heart and one mind and one prayer. We were at a conference in Kamloops and Stockwell Day spoke, and he goes, you know, you Indigenous people now, with the power that you have, you could negotiate the right deal that you need. Made me think of Minister Oliver, what he said, why don't the First Nations take the money? They need it. Maybe we do. But we don't need it more than what's helping us and what's feeding our spirit. What is the foundation of our laws, of our culture, and our spirituality? What is the foundation of the teachings of how we make the drums or how you see them use their regalia? We don't need it money more than that. But Stockwell Day, he was saying, we consult First Nations. I'm glad we got to speak after him, hey, Uncle. Because they don't. Me and Uncle and I, we went up to the Alberta tar sands. I talked to a lady, and she said, can you share my story? Can you help us? And it was sad. She's already talking to my mom, and my mom said, roll up your sleeve and show them then. She rolled it up to her elbow, and there's blisters from her wrist all the way to elbow. And she said, show them more, and she rolled up her pant leg. And she said, this is how the cancer starts. I was holding a bottle of water, and she pointed at it, and she goes, that's the only way my kids could drink or bath. The doctor said if we bath them for them more than 2 minutes at a time, they'll get sick. And they said, my kids are in the hospital getting treated for cancer. So I talked to ask Stockwell Day, I said, did you consult with them? Did you drink their water? Did you sit down with them? I said, I did, we did. We went up there. It's unacceptable that people are dying. When we had a referendum in a community hall like this, and I hear some negotiations going on with some other nations, and it's going pretty high up, over 200 million. That would help a lot of my people out of poverty, and it would. And we had a referendum, and we had to say that in our community. This is what you could get. You could get a lot of money. Or you could spend a little bit of our resources that we have and fight them. And that's when my mom stood up. And she said, we're going to vote no, and not one of your butts are going to be sitting in your seat when we vote no. Every one of you is going to stand up. And she's the one who said this, you're going to warrior up, right? So it was 100% consensus that we would do that. And then they say, hey, this is for the economy. For whose economy? That 1%, right? Not ours. Are we benefiting? No, we're taking all the risk. We're taking the risk. All the risk, and people are dying. Cancer assists the size of a softball on their elk and their moose. Cancer assists the size of a tennis ball or a golf ball on the fish. I remember reading in 2013 an article that talked about that aquifer that supplies 20% of Canada's water. That their process of getting the tar out of the land took 2 tons of earth to get 1 barrel. You know, barrels are smaller than this podium. And it took 3.5 barrels of water to get 1 barrel. And they're getting 2 million barrels a day. They're consuming more water than the whole city of 8 million people annually than the city of Toronto. And the water that is going back, they're ruining that too, on top of it. And that study said that you're drying out the land. You're drying it out. I said, remember last year when Richard Kinder said, we have lots of confidence in these 3 applications for the pipeline it's going to go through. Well, Palomado didn't go through. The people down in Georgia stood up like we are standing up, and they said it's not going to happen. It didn't happen. Then they had the NAD pipeline that didn't go through, and the same thing, they were really confident. And I said, don't you guys remember that, how confident he was? I talked to the shareholders. I said, your dividends were cut, the money that you're receiving, by 75%. Your stock fell. I said, coincidentally, 4 months after I came and spoke to you guys, it fell by 60%. I said, you guys are business people. Make sound decisions around what you want to invest your money in, not in this house of cards that's about to fall apart. I come here and I think, God, this is so beautiful, and the big reason why I'm here is I don't want your waters to turn to what our waters are already. But here they are in Alberta coming to us and saying, we don't want you to go through what we're going through. That's why we're coming together. I was here and I was like, oh, the fresh air is so beautiful. It's so good, and it's like, you still have the clam? Yeah, we go down and get it, and the crab. It's been 30 years since I ate out of there. But we're changing that too. Our salmon count for the Indian River was down to 6,000 about 10 years ago. So we started fixing the spawning beds and the waterfalls and making it easier for the salmon to get up there. I was up there last year, and they counted 1.6 million in one day. Our community's fixing it. And I'm going to close with this, and this is what I said to Richard Kinder and those guys. I said, if you win, I said, we all lose. I said, if I win, you and everybody in here will win. I said, that's true. And I said, because you're incapable of making sound decisions for your own future generations, because you're influenced by greed, that you can't make a choice to have a better earth for our children, because you can't do that, and you're part of humanity, so I will. My people will, and I know each and every one of you will. So thank you very much.
Wai Haskell Peace Naxil Esquis Siut. As you all know, that's simply good day, my relatives, my dear friends and relatives. My traditional name is Siut. I want to begin by expressing my heartfelt gratitude for the kind invitation to be here today. I definitely feel in my heart of hearts that I'm at home here. When I arrived, I was so impressed by the number of cars outside. I was absolutely blown away by the number of cars outside. I had a heck of a time finding a parking spot. But it really lifted my spirits to know that there are so many people that understand the issues, that care enough to take the time to come together like this. The 3 rules are, number 1, show up. Number 2, speak up. And number 3 is stand up. And I know we all know this, is organize, organize, organize. We must have focus, and we must move beyond and rise above our passion and our, incredibly strong feelings about the need to consider and understand the teachings of our ancestors, our elders, about the absolute need to honor the land and to honor the people. And we have to organize ourselves effectively in a way to push back this agenda. And interestingly, I know there are people in this room. This is a battle that needs to be fought again and again and again. I know there are people in this room that fought this battle 40 years ago. I remember the West Coast Oil Ports Inquiry, when the Union of BC Indian Chiefs was involved in that. We're still dealing with the fallout of Mount Poly. It's absolute criminal what happened there, and absolutely no one has been held account for that. We still have no idea what the final outcome of that absolute act of negligence on the part of the Christy Clark government. I'm sure you all are aware of the scathing report that came out from the Auditor General's office with respect to mining and the absolute lack of political will on the part of the Clark government to compel the companies to be responsible and accountable. And when we were having our forum in Sumas a few nights ago, we started to talk about a concept of Battleground BC. And we thought of branding the fight in British Columbia with respect to Site C, Lilu Island, another incredibly stupid, insane idea on the part of this government and Petronas to build an LNG facility in the most sensitive place in the Skeena estuary with respect to salmon. I'm just so pleased that there was 150 scientists and academics recently came out with a collective statement with respect to the absolute sleaziness of the Site C dam. Everyone in this room knows it's completely unnecessary. Everyone in this room knows it's a sleazy make-work project so that the Clark government can, in some sense, fulfill their notions of jobs BC, because the LNG bubble is pretty much burst. I think that in regard to fighting these battles over and over and over again, I know that there are some of us in this room that aren't getting any younger. I think we need to consider what our revered elder, Tom Sampson, was talking about. And somehow we need to take the teachings that reflect thousands of years of traditional knowledge and somehow we need to blend that with the acknowledgement and the recognition of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the 94 recommendations coming out of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, and somehow we need to develop Indigenous legal orders that will protect the land, will protect the watersheds, will protect the lakes, the rivers, and the oceans. A marine conservancy, that's kind of what I'm talking about, but something a little stronger than that. We need to begin to consider bringing our minds together with those people that know how to do these things in order to have those things in place. Because there will always be corporations and companies coming from some of the most corrupt countries in the world that will come to Victoria and Ottawa peddling these schemes to industrialize the land and to pollute the land and walk away from those operations and just leave the pollution and the mess behind. We have to somehow not complete this cycle over and over again so our grandchildren are sitting in these chairs someday saying, yeah, my grandpa used to come to these meetings and talk about these issues.
Come out, support events like this, talk to your neighbors, and organize. When you see a chance to join a town hall or a chance to speak with someone that's in government, bend their ear. They need to hear it from you because that's the only way this is going to change. We're seeing it from the ground up. People are angry and they're stimulated to engage with this in a way that is really encouraging, but it really will take everyone to change everything. So, and we need nothing less. We're in a climate crisis.
My whole family are involved and they're doing it, my whole nation. And that's the kind of movement we need, because it's everybody's problem. If we want to create something for our future generations, we better do something about it now.
Today we had about 200 people show up and celebrate our Salish Sea and celebrate our Wsanec Inlet and the beautiful place that we live in. And you know, what a great day it is to have everyone come out and stand with us and celebrate with us. And we look forward to future events like this and how we can bring like-minded people who care about our environment and who care about keeping our resources so that other future generations can use these resources. And you know, it's as Chief Rubin had mentioned, you know, it's doing it with one mind and one heart and one prayer. And you know, I really admire those words from him, and that's the spirit we have here today.